Lupus LA would like to thank our generous sponsors for their support of the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Emerge Business Solutions serves as a personal and professional CFO for clients across a wide spectrum of industries. They handle financial affairs with integrity and transparency. Gemini Beauty believes in beauty for a cause, and in their case, the cause is lupus. The team at Gemini is changing the skincare game for good. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, and as always, thanks very much to our sponsors for allowing us to share these important lupus stories with our audience. Today, the lupus story you're about to hear is from Olga Torres. Straight out of New York City, Olga is a narrative medicine lecturer at Columbia University. She's an author and she's a patient advocate. So she really understands how important telling patient stories is and is truly an expert in it. So I'm happy to have you here, Olga. You could probably teach me a few things about my job here on the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. In fact, right before coming on, I was doing patient advocacy stuff where I have to get on the phone with people at hospitals and say, please don't let this patient linger there unattended. Do your job, help them. So yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Tell me a little bit about, I think it's kind of fascinating how you ended up in the field that you're in, but tell me a little bit about your personal lupus story to get us started.
Sure. So my whole life, all I wanted to do was be an advocate of some sort. My career choice was criminal defense work. I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. And when I got to college, I started experiencing joint pain. And I was young because I was skipped 2 years. And so I was young when I got to college, and I went to school in upstate New York. So it was cold, there were hills, and of course, heavy backpacks. So when I went to the local clinic and I said, hey, I have joint pain, I have joint swelling, they said that it was because of the stress, because of, I wasn't used to being up in that weather, in the cold, and that basically I might want to take a break or take less credits. I didn't know the term yet, but I didn't realize I was being gaslighted at that point, right? Fast forward, I got a full scholarship to college. Fast forward, I got a scholarship to law school. Unheard of at the time. It's quite unheard of now, but there's a couple of law schools that will do that for you if you're going into public interest law, which I was. And same thing happened. Now I was in Washington, D.C. at a major city. So I went to a big hospital, right? And I complained of the same thing. And guess what? I was told the same thing, right? I was stressed because I was under the pressure of keeping up grades, and I was under the pressure of maintaining my scholarship. And oh, guess what? Law school's hard. And so it was probably that's the reason that my joints were swollen and my knees hurt and my hair was falling out. And I was like, I felt like Sesame Street, right? English is my second language. And I was like, one of these things is not like the other. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm not going into medicine, right? So I started working as an attorney, and my mom got cancer. And while I was in college, my grandma had cancer. So I was commuting to see her. So the little part of me was like, I trust doctors. So maybe they know what they're talking about. So then I'm taking care of my mom, and she's unfortunately quite sick with cancer. And it wasn't until I didn't, I was like literally working with my fingers like this, right? And it wasn't until my hair, Adam, was falling out, and in all transparency, the Latina vanity in me was like, oh no, I need to look kind of good when I go to court. That I then sought further, like something, I asked to go see, and somebody's got to know something about this. And then I saw another doctor that did further testing. Now we're talking undergrad, all law school, and I'm a practicing attorney. Until they did the right blood work that showed that, the numbers showed that something was off. But then I started a trial, right? And I started receiving messages. Hey, please call us from the doctor's office. Oh, I will in my head, I'm thinking, I will when the trial is over. Finally, I'm in between, and I had to run back to my office, and the phone rang, and I didn't mean to, but habit, I pick up the phone. And the receptionist puts my doctor through, and she says, listen, I've been trying to reach you. You have lupus. But, I'm an attitudinal New Yorker. I go, I can't have lupus because I haven't been to Connecticut or around any deer or ticks. And I can imagine in her head, she wants to say, no, stupid. I didn't say Lyme disease. I said lupus, but she was very kind. And she said, no, I said lupus. And then all of a sudden, I'm the one that's like, I have no idea what lupus is. And that's when I started my journey of self-educating and partnering with my physicians around, well, what is this disease? What works for me, right? Versus what they wanted to impose for me to take, right? That was horrible on my body. And in essence, co-creating a treatment plan for me, right? But it took that long, and also my lack of knowledge and information, because there really wasn't anything out there, right, that was telling us. There was a lot of information on Lyme disease, right, because I felt like, if I'm going to be really honest, I felt like wealthy people were getting it, right, in these wealthy areas. But there were so many of us that were getting this disease called lupus, but nobody was saying anything about it. So I'm so grateful for organizations like yours that are really putting a spotlight on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I think it knows when you look back and you think about all the doctors that missed stuff and that said those things. I mean, I hope that by sharing these stories, we're going to get to those doctors who think, all right, let me just take one more blood test or one more look, because I think that makes such a huge difference in people's care. And I think that's happened. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 16, and I think the world has completely changed. Partially because people look up stuff on their own and go ask their doctor, which I'm always a big fan of. Ask your doctor, hey, could it be lupus? And I think that's a really important message. But I'm getting off topic a little bit. So let me go back. So you're a hard charging criminal defense attorney. You get this diagnosis. Does that immediately change your lifestyle? Does the doctor talk to you about, hey, this may not jive with a lupus diagnosis, or how did that process happen?
No, thankfully I had pretty fantastic doctors. I mean, I was already taking care of my mom. I had a caseload of, I can't even quantify it because, we just kept taking on cases. So probably close to 100. I mean, we rotated, we would swap cases, but it was a huge felony caseload, right? So what my doctor said was, you need to immediately figure out and get onto the proper medications, right? But in that moment, even though they were able to see it in my blood work, I wasn't feeling as bad as I was feeling in other times where I went to go see medical care. My mom was weeks away from a bone marrow transplant. So in my head, I was rallying people to donate platelets, rallying people to donate blood, because that's what I was told to do by her hospital and her healthcare team. So that was way more important to me than my diagnosis. My mom is hospitalized. I'm not sleeping. And I go home to just check on the plants, everything at home. And I wake up in excruciating pain. And I can't even move my legs because my knees are so red and swollen. And I realize, oh, crap. That's right. My doctor said I need to go see a specialist to get on the right medications. Because I didn't even go to find out about hydroxychloroquine and everything else that I needed to get on at the time. So I had to go emergency, right, to see the specialist because she said, go to the ER. And I just felt like, go to the ER for lupus, right? Again, not being knowledgeable, not realizing how many people end up in the ER hospitalized. So she was able to fit me in to give me some emergency injections, put me on medicine immediately. I had to then thankfully see my doctor was put on, seeing a rheumatologist. And she said to me, honestly, you should have been hospitalized. That's how sick you were. I then was started on the right medicines. And she said to me, I don't like telling my patients to change their lifestyle, but you do need to, these are the things that we need to work on. or you will end up again in that emergency situation. And I will not see you in the office. I will only see you in the hospital, because I'm going to explain to you your numbers, and I'm going to explain where you were, where you are. And she said, we need to become intelligent about this. You need to understand them as well or better than me, right? Because you're the one that has lupus. And that was really eye-opening. She said, you can't take care of anybody if you don't take care of yourself. She did that whole, mask, oxygen, plane thing, right? And that made sense to me, right? Because I had taken my mom very sick to see family, and I realized, right, if I don't take care of me, I can't take care of her, and that resonated with me, and that's when I really got serious about. And when I had flares and I knew something was wrong, I took myself to the hospital. I was like, this is my doctor. I haven't taken care of me. Mea culpa. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Save me.
Right. Yes. Right.
And so you continued to practice law for a while and tried to figure out kind of a lifestyle management.
I did. Yeah.
Approach.
My coworkers were fantastic, and I still took night arraignments and all the things that everybody else was doing, but it was like I knew when things were taking a toll. I would ask people, can you cover these cases? And I'm going to come in at 10 instead of 8. Even if I wasn't sleeping, I need to just be horizontal and not vertical, because everything hurts, right? Or I know I need to be put on steroids, and I can't be thinking about weight gain or all that stupid stuff. I know what I need, and I need to do that. And we were a great office of that. Like, oh, you are on maternity, paternity leave. Who's covering for who, right? Or you had some sort of medical emergency. So everybody was pretty good about that before there was talk about that, right? Before that was the norm, if you will. Yeah.
Right. Before it was, right.
Because it wasn't fair for everybody to take my night arraignment shifts, because nobody wants night arraignment shifts, right? Who wants to be at arraignments until 2:00 in the morning? Right. Because that's what we look like.
All right. So tell me that where the transition came out of law and into getting this master's of narrative medicine and going back to school and doing, I mean, that's a pretty big career change. So how did that transpire?
Sure. So I was, I wouldn't say happily, but just like a busy bee, taking care of my clients, which I loved. It's my passion, and taking care of my mother. And I caught food poisoning in the Bronx. I ate the last piece of Jamaican jerk chicken from a local food vendor. And, but I was too busy taking care of everybody else. And I let the food poisoning get to the point where I had to go to the hospital for IV hydration, right? Gatorade, ginger ale was not cutting it. And because of my precarious health situation, because I'm an overachiever, Adam. So one autoimmune disease wasn't enough. I have 6, right? So like many of us, right? They come in packages. So I have scleroderma, Sjogren's, Raynaud's, RA. So I have a number of them, right? And so in addition to that, I was born with a pituitary tumor. It's benign. It's still there. But it causes diabetes insipidus, the opposite of diabetes mellitus, meaning my sugar is low. So all of that complicated things. And so my doctor said, you have to be admitted. Let's get you properly hydrated. Let's get your electrolytes straightened out. And this is what I say. I got to be out in 2 days because I have another trial, right? So I go to the hospital, and they give me something called hypertonic IV. It has 3 times the amount of sodium than a normal bag of IV. And they were supposed to check my blood every 3 to 4 hours. Well, 1 day passed, 2 day passes, and I'm supposed to be discharged on the 3rd day. The night of the 2nd day, I feel something's really wrong. My whole body is shaking. And I try to make my way from the chair by the window back to the bed. And I realized, I think I'm seizing or something's really wrong. And I could no longer get to the call button. Now, mind you, I asked and pressed the button, and my family members and my coworkers were like, hey, when are you going to draw her blood? And all I was told was that it was August and they were understaffed and that they would get to it. And that anyway, I was severely dehydrated. They never got to it. My brain swelled from all the extra sodium, and I lost the myelin, the protective sheath, around about a third of my brain. I basically died, was resuscitated. Not basically, I died, was resuscitated, and was in ICU for 2 weeks. I had to learn how to walk, talk, take care of myself again. In addition to still having to take the medicines for my lupus, right? It was 6 years of recovery, inpatient and outpatient, because my mother became very sick again, and I would stop my therapy to help take care of her to the best that I could. I lost my mother within about a year of my brain injury, and a year later, my father to Alzheimer's. So I, at the moment, felt like, well, what am I recovering for? Like, I don't even have a family. I'm an only child. And so eventually I got the muster, the chutzpah, whatever, to like go forward. And I said, I want to get my legal license back. I recovered enough. I got my license back. I did health law for a bit. And I realized I need to repair my relationship with physicians, because I have a boatload of health problems, and I need to work with doctors to get better and to continue. I need medicine. I need care. So eventually I realized health law isn't going to cut it for me. And I found this narrative medicine program at Columbia University, because narrative medicine seeks to have the healthcare providers use the skills of narrative, right, to better hear, interpret, and be moved by patients' stories of illness. So instead of listening for symptoms, they listen for the patient's whole story. And it's not more time, but it's what they do with that time. And I have used my degree to work with both healthcare providers, with patients, and I very much love the work that I do. And it pairs with my patient advocacy work, because I don't charge for my patient advocacy work. I know how hard it was for us to get the proper care for my grandmother, for my mother, for myself. And so I like to help people that, often can't afford to get the help they need.
Sure. I think that's super, super important. All right. So here's what I want to take a break. And then when we come back from the break, I really want to do a deeper dive into the importance of sharing patient stories and communicating that to your doctor, because I think that's an incredible skill that every lupus patient needs to learn. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with some more from Olga Torres.
Lupus LA's Facebook Live Chat series connects leading lupus and health experts with our community to answer the most current and important questions. For more information, visit lupusla.org.
We are back on the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. We're telling Olga Torres' story today, and we were talking about her really, I think, unique role in the patient-doctor relationship process as a narrative medicine specialist, getting patients to correctly talk to their doctors is really the essence, and getting doctors really to listen correctly to patient stories. So give us kind of the best advice you can about how we can make that process and those relationships work better for patients and for doctors.
The first thing that I say is, we know that healthcare providers are short on time. So I advocate, think about what you want to share, right? So write a list of questions. Like this is old information, but it's always good to repeat. Write a list of your questions and the points that you want to bring up, right? And then anything that we share with our providers, we're going to share in the form of a story, right? You don't just come in and say, my knee hurts. Well, you're going to share what happened with your knee, right? It could be that it's actually an old injury. It could be you have RA, but now it's flared, whatever it is, it's a story. But you can't share that whole story, right? I mean, look, I'm an attorney. I could talk to you forever. So you're going to try to get it down to as succinctly, but as compelling of a story as possible. So we know that doctors on average, it used to be you had 20 seconds, then it was 15 to 17. Now that's down to like 11 to 13 seconds, right? Studies show that a doctor is going to cut you off, right? And studies also show that if they let you speak for on average about another 5 seconds, you would be done saying what you wanted to say. So if you practice what you're going to say and get that story out, you will be in a better position to be able to share and communicate what you came to say, right? So my first advice is, of course, write down what you want to share with your doctor, any questions, right, about medicines, whatever it could be. Second, practice. This idea of practicing makes perfect really falls here when, in terms of the story that you want to tell your physician, right, your medical story. Practice in the mirror. If you have a pet, practice with your pets. I love practicing with my cat because she ignores me. She starts licking and cleaning herself. So this way I know, sure, if the doctor's going to look away, I'm not going to be, worried about, they don't like my story. I'm going to just power through and share what I want to share, right? The other advice is, if you get interrupted, don't be shy to circle back and finish what you want to say, right? I'm talking to you and Adam says, no, that's not what say, I'm sorry, Dr. Adam, but I'm almost done. Please let me finish, right? You may get a little flustered. You may feel a little pink in the face, but just finish what you want to say, right? And my third really key piece of advice is, they're going to ask you close-ended questions. Does it hurt more when you go like this, right? And you can say, no, it doesn't. But if I'm carrying something in my arm, it does, right? Put some context to it. One of my really good examples is, I don't eat that much, right? But if they ask, did you lose your appetite, right? Has your appetite changed? Don't just say yes. You could say, I'll give you the example of my husband. He's going to kill me. But did you lose your appetite? He could say, well, yes, normally I eat 2 meals a day, but now, right, I barely eat one, right? That's a really good example because it gives some context. This is a 6'4" man, right? 240 pounds. He's eating 1 meal a day. That's worrisome, right? That gives context. So any open-ended question, closed-ended question, answer in an open-ended way. Make sure that you stand out as a patient and you're not a yes-no patient, right? You need to really put some flavor, is what I like to say, to your answers, right? So these are some really good ways to tell your medical story, and you're not adding a lot of time to your visit. You're just really giving them a sense of who is Adam when they come to this to the visit, especially if you're seeing a new provider. And my last piece of advice is, let's say they've cut you off and you haven't found a way to circle back before the visit is over. Don't be afraid to say, excuse me, but I still have this one point that I didn't get answered, right? Because the minute you leave that office, it's going to be really hard to get in touch. And I just learned, and you may know this, but I was unaware that as of maybe a little more than 2 years ago, both Medicare and health insurances allow for physicians to bill for emails and messaging through patient portals. Some of the hospitals allow up to $100. Private doctors are charging up to $180. I just wrote an op-ed, and I'm hoping it gets picked up. I am outraged by this because when you go to the patient portal, it doesn't say, please be aware you will be charged for this message, right? And physicians recommend that you sign up for the patient portal so you can communicate. So if you are someone that doesn't qualify quite for Medicaid, right, but you are already in some sort of health care debt, right? If you're messaging, you're falling into further debt. So anyway, I am.
That seems like a lawsuit. From a lawyer's perspective, I would assume
listen,
that seems like a lawsuit, but
yeah,
I didn't know that.
I just learned it myself too. So, what I say is get your questions answered, because you might get charged if you have to ask through the patient portal. I'm not saying don't use the patient portal. My recommendation is find out through your health insurance what the pricing is when you have to reach out to your physician. Yeah.
I think you just gave us a ton of really good advice. And as you're doing it, I'm sort of going through my medical appointments and even though it's interesting because I work with a lot of my doctors through Lupus LA, or, I have outside relationships with them, but I still, they know me, they know who I am, and I know who they are, but it's still trying to keep them in the topic space that I'm interested in discussing during our medical appointments. That's my challenge, is sometimes it's like, oh, well, what are we doing? What's going on at Cedars this week, or what's going on at Lupus LA, or what's, and trying to say, wait a second, we gotta focus here on my healthcare. Then we could have that conversation on your time, not on my time. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the challenges, but I love the rehearsal advice. I think that's really important. I think I'm amazed at the 13-second statistic. I think that's incredible.
11 to 13 seconds. It's really
11 to 13.
Yeah, it's really. So that's why if you practice and they cut you off, do not be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I took time to really practice what I want to say to you. It's very short. Let me finish, right? It's just give me a moment to finish. And I know give me
another 12 seconds or something.
Yeah,
right?
And I know you are pressed for time. So this is actually adding time to what we have to say. And so I use humor and self-deprecation. Everybody has something else. So when doctors want to take me somewhere else, they know I'm a narrative medicine instructor, right? They know I'm at Columbia. And they're like, oh, so, what have you published lately? Or where are you speaking next? I'm like, hold on. Right now, I want to talk about all of this, right? I joke around, like, I want to talk, so I point at my body and they laugh, right? I'm like, seriously, I really want to talk about, my hand. I have Jacquard, so I don't know if you could see, my hand is turned that way. So I'm like, I really want to talk about the pain in my hand. I'm like, can we talk about my crooked fingers? And then they smile and they're like, I'm sorry. I just, I like to hear where you're speaking. What are you doing? And I'm like, I appreciate that. But to your point, this visit is about me, right? About my health, my pains, right? So yeah, it's hard to sometimes keep them on topic. Yeah.
And so what do you say to the patient who, because when you said the yes/no patient, I thought about a lot of our Lupus LA patients have to really learn that skill of not just, there's all the medical anxiety when you're sitting in that office, right? They're going to give you a test result. They're going to ask you a question you don't know the answer to. They're going to, tell you to be on a new medicine you don't want to be on. So there's all that anxiety. So how do you tell that patient to learn to sort of get that confidence? Because to me, that's what it is. It's the confidence to say, let me tell you about, when I picked up my dog and my shoulder hurt and, that kind of thing, versus the does your shoulder hurt? Yes, no answer. Right. So how do you, what's the method behind that?
Sure. I think you just put it really well, which is, let me tell you about how my shoulder hurt. You have to think of your provider so they're never going to be your BFF, right? Back just a couple years ago, my teen used to say BFF, and now she's like, oh, Mom, please don't say that. But so your provider is never going to be your BFF, but they are someone that you have to establish an important relationship with, right? And if there's someone that is going to be cold, detached, not want to listen to the story of your shoulder, right? That are just like, no, I want yes or no answers, then run, don't walk, right? They're never going to be the person that is the right fit for you. You need someone that you're going to be able to say, let me tell you how I injured my shoulder, right? I'm walking my dog, and every time my dog pulls, I get this shooting pain. Because that's really the story of your shoulder, right? And you got it out. And then they're going to be like, so does it hurt when you pull it back this way? And then you say, because when you go in to see your provider, you better be prepared to answer those questions, right? I call this being a professional patient. That doesn't mean you're in the doctor all the time. It means you can answer those questions. When does it hurt more? When does it hurt less? How long has it been hurting? Because I always say, put yourself in the shoes of the provider, right? Imagine showing up and you're the doctor, and then this patient can't answer any of your questions. How serious are you going to take this patient? I'm not going to take this patient very serious. But if this patient could tell me their meds, their allergies, and all the symptoms of the shoulder, hey, this patient is on top of it. We can have a conversation, right? So again, it's like showing up. If they show up as professionals, I want to show up as professionals. I may not be able to answer all their questions, but I want to be able to answer as many as of them as possible, right? And so that is the story of your shoulder. So try to think of them as like, I'm going to have a conversation and get a little looser with my answers. And the more you do it, the better and better you get at it, right? And so my mom was like that. She could tell you a million stories, a million jokes, and she would show up and just, just give one-word answers. And eventually she got so that she would have entire conversations. And when she got cut off, she would be like, hey, I was speaking. I let you speak, let me speak. And I would be like, all right, Ma, you don't have to like completely cut the doctor down. But it comes with practice. And
so tell me the other side of it. Oh, go ahead.
No, and remembering that the physician is a person, right? So they're not working if you're not there. So you don't have to like put them down, but just, you know what I mean? Like, I know we put them on pedestals, but we have to like try to equalize that a little bit. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I think that, no. I think that's really important. But so tell me now the flip side of it. Tell me what you tell doctors, because I think, or what you think doctors really need to know in order to become better bedside doctors, I guess is the term I'm coining today.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. It's a lot of the same, right? It's that if you're only getting yes, no answers, you're not hearing the whole story, and you are likely going to miss something that will help you diagnose, right? And there's a lot of examples of this when they come to narrative medicine sessions. There's a doctor treating a African-American woman for hypertension, and he keeps scolding her visit after visit because he's like increasing her medicine. He's claiming she's not following the diet he's giving her. And he comes to a narrative medicine long weekend with us, right? Friday through Sunday. And he's telling me, I don't really see how this is going to work. I do listen to my patients. I'm like, do you listen to the answers that you're asking, like to the responses to your answers? Or do you give them a chance to say, like, why are you here, right? What can I do for you? Why are they here? Well, they're here to see me because I just need the symptoms. I'm like, no, how about just like an open-ended, why are you here? What can I do for you, right? Let's wait for them to give you that response, right? So the woman comes to see him, I guess, a couple of weeks after the narrative medicine session. And he says, what is happening in your life? Like he couldn't figure out how to word it. He just asked, what is happening? She looks at him and she says, well, my blood pressure started going up when my son and his 2 children moved in with me because his girlfriend left him and he's unemployed. So this woman is with her full-time job, took on another job, and was looking, I believe, for like another part-time job. So her blood pressure was never going to go down because she had the weight of the world on top of her. She didn't need more medicine. She needed a social worker, someone to help her son get a job. So he then got social services in his office involved and was like, oh, I never asked her like what was happening in her life around the blood pressure. He saw a statistic, right? Black woman, high blood pressure. She's probably eating a salty diet, which she kept telling him she was not, right? And he just, he believed the narrative that he saw, understandably, because this is how they're trained, right? So it's really about not putting patients in preconceived boxes and really asking them, like, what is happening, right? Like, what can I do for you past these, like, and it's not about listening to a long, convoluted story, but asking more open-ended questions and asking them more around being willing to listen to their stories and not just these, like, what is your symptom? Here's some medicine for it, right?
Yeah, no, I think good advice on both ends of that for sure. Tell me, what do you think is the importance of sharing your story publicly, or to your friends or to your family if you're a patient? And I mean, I use this podcast as an example. I mean, this is a bigger megaphone and a bigger microphone, but what's the general importance of people, sharing their lupus story?
I think it empowers you to feel like this disease doesn't control me, right? I am in control. Like it's just something that you have, right? I know it really helped me feel more in control of the disease. And I remember sharing it one time with a group of friends, and this person, the tears started coming out. And I was like, oh, I didn't mean to upset you. I don't have to talk about it. And she said, I've been living with lupus, I think she said 6 or 7 years, and I've never told anybody because it's just such, I don't think she used embarrassing, but I think she used like a difficult part of my life. And I still haven't learned how to navigate it and my friends, family, and my career. And she was very sick when she was diagnosed, like she was hospitalized. It impacted, I believe, both her kidneys and her liver until she was stabilized. And she kept it secret. Like we were all fairly close. We would have gone to the hospital. But she just didn't know how to tell people. And in her mind, it felt very much like it was a cancer diagnosis, right? Because she just felt very out of control around it. And so, everybody hugged her, and we, it was a very cathartic experience for us. And I realized, I'm obviously, it's obvious I could talk about anything openly, but for other people, it's not that way, right? So I share because I don't know who is listening, that it's not like that for them, right? And this was very early on in my diagnosis. And so I started sharing in any opportunity that I could, where it was pertinent, right? I didn't show up and was like a burger and fries, let me tell you my lupus story. But, where it was, where it felt natural and pertinent. And then I started getting invited to talk more about it, and also helping patients say, that medicine is making me feel really sick. What other medicine options are there? And if your doctor's unwilling to work with you, how to politely find another doctor. And, for me, it was hard. I had to change doctors when I was diagnosed with scleroderma, and I loved my doctor. But then, working with a team of doctors, like how do you make that work? Those type of conversations, which any of us with lupus realize we have to have, right? If it impacts our skin, then you have to have a dermatologist. And how do you get your dermatologist to work with your rheumatologist? It impacts my lungs. So I have to have my pulmonologist always coordinate with my rheumatologist. And if you catch anything, you have to stop your Benlysta. And I'm always like, please don't make me stop my Benlysta. I'll break up with my husband of 20-something years. Just don't make me stop with my Benlysta. It's like my precious,
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people feel that way.
My husband's like, I'm right here.
Yeah, no, I think, we could do 2 hours on this because I think it's so important. And you're really the heart of why we do a show like this, because you have such great advice. And I really hope that the patients who are listening to this podcast have learned something so important in their care. So I really thank you for doing this. I know we're going to work with you at Lupus LA doing other educational events. And so we're so happy that you've become part of our team. And I really appreciate you spending the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope it means at some point I get to go to LA and meet you. My daughter was like,
100%.
My daughter's like, LA, I have shopping to do. I was like, little girl, no one's taking you.
I'll show her the ropes. It's okay. That part I have down. So excellent. Thanks so much, Olga.
Yeah, thank you.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.